Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's call with Congressman Adam Smith. During today's call, we'll be taking questions from constituents like you. To ask a question, please press star 3 on your telephone keypad right now. You may also sign up for the Congressman's newsletter by pressing star 6 at any time during the call. Again, please press star 3 right now to ask a question live and star 6 to subscribe to his newsletter. With that, I will turn it over to Congressman Adam Smith. Congressman, the floor is yours.
Great. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And thanks to everyone for joining tonight. I look forward to the conversation. There's a lot going on. Mostly want to make sure everyone stays updated on the shutdown. So just sort of 4 things I'm going to touch upon here before we turn it over to your questions. First of all, I want you to use my office as a resource during the government shutdown. If you have questions about what federal government services are being affected, if you have challenges that you're encountering, getting help, my office wants to be helpful with all of that. Try to keep you updated and informed and help wherever we can. So please don't hesitate. Check our website. We have regular updates on the impacts of the shutdown, services, where you can find them, what's being shut down, what's not, how we can help you. So reach out to us. So that's number 1. Number 2, I wanted to say just a quick word about the peace agreement that has been reached in Israel, between Israel and the Palestinians in Gaza. I think that's an enormous positive step to actually end the war, end the fighting, and get the hostages returned. So very supportive of that. But there is a lot more work that needs to be done. Humanitarian assistance needs to be rushed in far greater numbers. And crucially, the next step is finding alternatives within the Palestinian people in Gaza to Hamas for leadership. I know the Arab states around there have been pledging for some time that they have Palestinian leaders that they will work with and will support. I hope that Prime Minister Netanyahu gives that a chance, genuinely works with the Palestinians to get an alternative to Hamas and make this more than just a brief ceasefire, but an actual lasting peace. A lot more work to be done on that. As far as the shutdown is concerned, my last point will be a much bigger explanation of how that played out. But right now, we're in a bit of an unprecedented situation. We have had shutdowns before. I've been present for at least 2 of them, 2013, 2019. I'm forgetting whether or not there was another one before that. And Speaker Mike Johnson and the House Republicans are taking a position that has never been taken before, and that is that as long as we are in a shutdown, the House will not meet and he will not negotiate with the Senate over how to get the government back started again. I think this is unacceptable. The House should be in session. We should be meeting. We should be dealing with a variety of different issues, and we certainly should be negotiating. But they shut it down and said, no, we're not going to talk. The Democrats in the Senate simply have to accept what Trump and Johnson and the Republicans are insisting upon. And that's not the way this is supposed to work. The reason the Senate has a filibuster, in theory, is because it would force bipartisan negotiations. You can't pass something with just Republican votes or just Democratic votes. So the 2 sides have to come together and attempt to resolve their differences and get to a solution. But the Republicans are refusing to engage in that right now. They're saying, take it or leave it. This is our budget. You have to live with it. Democrats are saying, no, we don't. Please talk to us. They're not. And that's part of the problem. I'm hoping that position will change sometime soon. I am urging Mike Johnson directly to change that position. But right now, that has frozen us. Final thing before I get into the larger explanation, sorry, just one more thing. We're a week into the shutdown now, a little bit more. It's going to get worse. Basically, a lot of the sort of running on fume stuff that a lot of the federal agencies can do, well, they're going to run out of that. They're going to have to start furloughing employees, reducing services in some instances. It gets more problematic as the days and weeks pass. So it is imperative that the Republicans bring us back into session in the House, negotiate, and get this shutdown over. Now, as far as what the shutdown is about, I want to make sure people understand this. The Trump budget and the Trump government has been the most partisan, extreme budget in government that I've dealt with in my time in Congress. They have aggressively passed a very partisan budget and not relied on any Democratic support for it. Of course, they passed their massive reconciliation bill, which prioritized trillions of dollars in tax cuts, massive increase to the Department of Homeland Security, a significant increase to the Department of Defense, and cut Medicaid, cut food benefits like SNAP, made cuts to the Affordable Care Act, eliminated foreign aid, eliminated the Department of Education. So, from a budget perspective, it's a very partisan, Republican focused budget. But then there's also the way Donald Trump has run his federal government. Even appropriations that have been passed by Congress, he has frozen those and not spent the money as Congress intended. So, that's part of the problem also with reaching an agreement here. Let's say we reach an agreement. Part of that agreement has to be a further restriction on Trump's ability to simply rescind it unilaterally, which he has done over and over again. And he's been very public about the fact that he's doing it for partisan and personal reasons, not for policy reasons. He talks about specifically targeting Democratic states, targeting Democratic priorities in a way that we've never seen before. So all of that means that this government is being run entirely by Trump and the Republicans. And now we get to the continuing resolution, which, as I mentioned earlier, requires a filibuster-proof majority in the Senate, which means at a minimum it requires 7 Democrats to vote for it. And they're refusing to negotiate. I mean, look, those budget priorities are not priorities that a Democrat would vote for. And if you're a Republican and you like that, well, great. That's fine. You can vote the way you want to vote. But Democrats have the right to vote the way they want to vote, too. So the budget is one. Two is the authoritarian way that Trump is using the federal government right now, which I mentioned a little bit in the budget conversation, how he's unilaterally blocking spending that he doesn't like and blocking spending to punish his political opponents, which is not the way the country is supposed to be run. But it goes much further than that. He's using the federal government to threaten the media if they dare criticize him. We've seen that over and over again. He's using the federal government to threaten law firms if they hire Democrats. He's using his Justice Department to persecute his enemies and protect his friends in a way that we haven't seen before. So again, Democrats like me, and then the Democrats in the Senate who have the votes to block that budget and block that Trump federal government, they're going to do it because they don't agree with what Trump is doing. And if they want our votes, they're going to have to come to the negotiating table and give us something that reflects the priorities that we think are the priorities that should be there for the American people. And I'll close by just mentioning the big one that we focused on, and that's healthcare. The cuts to Medicaid, the cuts to the Affordable Care Act, the expiring tax credits, which are about to kick in. People are already getting to the point where they have to select their healthcare plans to be ready by January 1, is going to drive up healthcare premiums by a massive amount, as much as 100% or more in some cases. And estimates are several million people will be driven out of the healthcare market. They won't have health insurance. They won't be able to afford it. Now, that certainly impacts those millions of people who will no longer have healthcare insurance, but I want people to understand it impacts all of us because the more people who are uninsured, the more healthcare providers will have to treat people who are, they call it uncompensated care, which is a fancy way of saying they can't pay. So we treat them, and that drives up the prices for everybody else who does have insurance or who can pay. So this impacts our entire healthcare system. It's a very important debate to have, one I believe Republicans should be willing to engage in. They're not right now. So that's where we're at. I want to get to your questions and comments, so I'll stop there, kick it back to the moderator, and I look forward to your questions, comments, and suggestions.
Thank you so much, Congressman. Before we get to the first question, I'd like to remind everyone on this call that if you would like to ask a question live, please press *3 on your telephone keypad right now. Once again, to ask a question, press *3 on your telephone keypad right now. And if you'd like to sign up for the Congressman's e-newsletter, press *6. All right, let's go to our first caller. We have Vivian on the line. Vivian is in Seattle. Vivian, you are live. What's your question?
Good afternoon, Congressman Smith. My question is, will the Democratic Party continue to pressure the government to show opposition and to avoid our healthcare prices doubling and the continued deterioration of our economy? I'm on my 5th month of unemployment, and it's just been really difficult to get anywhere. So what are the plans?
Yeah. No, and I didn't even mention several other issues. The tariffs that President Trump has unilaterally imposed, which is in violation of the law. Congress is supposed to be setting tariffs. This has driven up costs and driven a lot of people out of business and cost a lot of jobs across the country. There's a ton of issues. I didn't also mention the way he is using ICE and the Department of Homeland Security to terrorize our communities, neighborhood by neighborhood, and go after people who have not committed crimes. There's a whole host of issues. Your question is that, are Democrats going to continue to stand up on this? I can't speak for the entire Democratic Party. Certainly can't speak for all 47 Democratic senators. But my sense is, yes, we feel very strongly about the issues, some of the issues you've raised around healthcare and others. The plan is to stand up and build national support to begin to reverse some of these policies. Now, look, it's a very frustrating time. Go ahead. Sorry, ma'am.
Congressman, yes, but the thing is, when you should be able to speak to what you represent us all, the 75 million Americans that didn't vote for President Trump.
Yeah, hold on just a second. Well,
Yeah.
I can speak for myself. I can speak for what I'm going to tell the Democratic Party to do. I can't tell you, and I can't guarantee you that every other elected Democrat is going to agree with me. I think that's a very reasonable point. I can tell you I'm going to do everything in my power to persuade them to continue to do that. And my belief is they will. But all I was saying is, I'm one elected official, and I'm going to stand up and fight as hard as I can. I don't have actual control over my fellow elected Democrats. That's the only point I was trying to make there.
I appreciate that, Congressman. Thank you very much.
So yeah, we're going to fight for all the reasons that you stated and many, many more. And the plan is to begin to build a coalition in this country that can oppose some of the things that Trump's doing that we don't support. And that is a short-term fight and a long-term effort. Because look, some 80 million people in this country voted for Donald Trump. And one of the things that I like to emphasize is if we're going to counter that, we have to reach out to some of those 80 million people. I think it is a huge mistake to assume that all Trump voters are awful, horrible, terrible, racist, bigoted people. Why did they vote that way? What are they concerned about? What can we as Democrats do better to address the issues that they're concerned about? I think that has to be part of how we build a coalition. And part of it is to go to those voters and say, Trump's cuts in healthcare, they're impacting you as Republican voters, and in many instances more than they're impacting Democratic voters. But we got to make that case, and we got to make that case 24/7, 365, because it's going to take some time and a lot of work, and I'm committed to continuing to work on it.
Thank you, Congressman, and thank you for that question, Vivian. Congressman, our next question comes from Travis, who is watching on Facebook. Travis asks, why not just pass the bill and work together now before the November 21st deadline?
Yeah, well, there is no November 21st deadline per se. Well, sorry, I understand what you're saying. The Republicans have passed that bill, and November 21st is going to be the deadline. The reason is because we as Democrats now have leverage. They need our votes for this. All right, I suppose we could wait until November 21st to have this fight, but the fight's going to be the same. I would ask the question back to you, why isn't Mike Johnson negotiating now? Okay, why is he saying, I'm not going to talk to you until you pass it until November 21st? November 21st is coming at us, whether we pass his bill or not. If his pledge is, trust me, pass this and I'll negotiate with you, well, let's get started. There's no reason on earth, just because the Senate hasn't passed the Republican continuing resolution, that we can't be talking and negotiating on this issue. if Johnson was genuinely sincere and wanted to talk to us, well, let's get talking. There's nothing to stop us from doing that. So that's the distrust that we have, that they're just going to take our votes when they need them and then ignore us. So yeah, I'm with you. Let's start negotiating.
Thank you, sir. And I'd like to just take a quick minute to remind everyone on the call that if you have a question you would like to ask, please press *3 on your telephone keypad right now. Next up, let's go to Tina. Tina is calling from Seattle. Tina, you are on live. What's on your mind?
Well, I asked if the Affordable Care Act was in court over 60 times and it was agreed that it was something that should stay in place. How does the Trump administration get to slowly dismantle it piece by piece and not back in the court telling them that they can't do that?
Yeah, no, the courts, to my mind, have really fallen down on their job. And the Affordable Care Act is one piece, but the tariffs are a big piece, the firings of hundreds of thousands of federal employees, but then also specific employees like Lisa Cook, the Fed board member, where Trump has clearly violated the law and done a variety of different things in violation of the law. The firings being the big one, the tariffs, a lot of the programs he's frozen. Gosh, I'm forgetting. There's so many different things. And some of the lawsuits he has started. And the courts have ruled from time to time, no, that's wrong. You can't do that. And then the Supreme Court has stepped in and said, well, he can do it until we decide. And they haven't decided. So they're allowing him to continue with the tariffs and continue with his cutting of money that Congress has duly appropriated unilaterally and illegally until some point at which they will decide whether or not he can clearly violate the law. Same is true with some of these troop deployments. Now, the federal courts have stepped in on the West Coast and said, no, there's no emergency in Portland that warrants the deployment of the U.S. military. But what would the Supreme Court do about that? Look, I mean, the law is there. The courts need to not just pass their rulings, but they need to enforce them. And the law is clear. If several times they have passed, the courts have decided, no, you can't cut this funding. No, you can't fire those people. No, you can't use the military in this way. And Trump has ignored it. And at that point, what the court's supposed to do is impose sanctions, fine or imprison the people who are disobeying their orders. So I think the courts need to be much more aggressive in terms of standing up for the law and the Constitution.
Thank you very much. Let's go right to our next caller. Right now we have Katrina on the line. Katrina is calling from Renton. Katrina, what's your question?
My question is, what are they doing about taxes? They're pricing people out, people that are low income, and not everybody has 2 to 5 people that can pay a mortgage. Some people are just one household.
Yeah. Two issues that I think you raised there. One is on taxes, but second is on basic affordability. And the crisis and the crunch that we certainly face in my district, in the Puget Sound region, I think in many places across this country, the cost of housing, the cost of healthcare, the cost of energy, the cost of food, and the cost of education as well has become so high, it's not keeping up with the wages that people are being paid. Housing is the number one biggest problem. You mentioned the mortgages, and needing more than one person in order to afford a mortgage. We need to build more housing in this country. A lot more housing in this country. We need to do it quicker and more cost effectively. And I think a lot of that has to do with reducing the permitting, opening up zoning, and really just prioritizing building more housing. Trump's tariffs, by the way, don't help. It has raised the cost of aluminum and steel, softwood lumber, appliances, all manner of things that are driving up the cost of housing. So drive down the cost of housing, number one. Number two, to your point on taxes, the main problem with taxes is locally. Living in King County, the county does pass more and more property taxes and more sales taxes to fund more and more items without, to my mind, adequately showing us, well, where are you spending the money? What are you doing with the money that we're already giving you? So I think local taxes are contributing to that pressure. On the federal level, we've been cutting taxes pretty consistently for over 20 years now. Now, my main beef there is we've been cutting taxes that primarily benefit the wealthy and upper middle class, people who have benefited massively from our economy. Look, our economy has generated a lot of wealth in the last 20, 30, 40 years. It's just that that wealth has gone to very few people up at the top. And somewhere around 60% of the population is struggling to pay their bills on a week in and a week out basis. That is the definitive policy challenge that we need to focus on. So part of getting after that, I think, is we need to get rid of the Trump tax cuts that benefit the wealthy so that we don't go along and make cuts to Medicaid programs that are vital for precisely the working poor that you are describing. Yeah, that economic pinch is the central issue. I think what Trump and the Republicans are working on is not addressing those issues. And in many cases, they're making it worse.
Thank you, Congressman. Before we get to the next question, I'd like to encourage everyone on this call to sign up for the Congressman's very informative e-newsletter. You can do that right now by pressing *6 on your telephone keypad. Next up, we have Mario on the line. Mario is in Seattle. Mario, you are on. What's your question?
How you doing, Congressman Adams? So,
I'm doing
my first question. Oh, I'm doing well, thank you. The first question is, if Trump is having an issue with meddling with the economies of states all across the country, are there any impeachment proceedings going on, and to what degree do you have a hand in it?
Sure. Do you want to ask your second question now, or should I take the first one first?
You go first one first. That's fine.
Sure. Yeah, there is an impeachment proceeding. There have been articles of impeachment introduced. Now, obviously, Republicans control the House. They control the Senate, for that matter. But impeachment starts in the House, and they have blocked any effort to bring that. Now, I will tell you my opinion on this. Impeachment is not where Democrats should be going right now. We should be focusing on the policy and the issues. And I say that if you were to chart me out a plausible path to impeach and remove Donald Trump from office, I would jump on that at the blink of an eye. There is no plausible path. If we aggressively pursue impeachment, we're simply giving Trump an easy win. You're not going to get it through the House, and you're certainly not going to get 67 senators to convict him. And what I've seen through the impeachment trials, and I've been through several of them, 3 as a matter of fact, when it doesn't work, it strengthens the president. The president stands up and says, I won, you lost. Look, this proves that the country was wrong and I was right. So I don't want to take us down the road of a losing fight. I'd rather focus on healthcare. I'd focus on healthcare. I'd focus on the tariffs, the devastating impact of those, the cuts to energy programs, the cuts to food security, the rising costs that we're facing in this country because of Trump's policies. I think that's the more effective argument than tilting at the windmill of impeachment right now. So, second question?
Yes, the second question is you briefly mentioned about the economy and how many of Trump's tariffs and also various meddling within state economy is really taking a toll on folks, especially when it comes to the job market, et cetera, et cetera. But there was another part of your answer from the last caller that suggests we've had calcification of wealth to the top of the social economic totem pole. What are we doing? What's the plan to disperse or disaggregate that wealth so other people can have the means to live?
Yeah. No, and look, let's be very clear. The challenges that exist in our economy predated Donald Trump. It would be wrong to say, oh, it's all Trump's fault. Trump's not helping for all the reasons that I outlined. But we've had a major economic problem that has been developing over the course of the last 50 years in this country, and that is the concentration of wealth and the reduction of opportunity. And you can look at it as how much money you're making and what are your costs. Both sides of that have cut against working people. I grew up in SeaTac. My father worked for United Airlines. He was a ramp serviceman, a baggage handler. At the time, good union job. The year he passed away, he was making $16 an hour, which was enough to raise a family of, well, 5 of us, I guess, all told, in SeaTac. Now, the wages have not kept up with the costs. The cost of housing has exploded. The cost of healthcare has exploded, energy, education. While meanwhile, the wage of your average airport worker, baggage handler or otherwise, has not kept up. So what can you do about that? Number one, support unions. At that same time that you've seen wages go down, you've also seen union membership go down. We need to bring back the bargaining power of working people. So I think more support for unions would be crucial. Number two, corporations have increasingly prioritized shareholder return over their workers and over investment in their companies. We have stock buybacks that drive up the cost of stock, take the money out of the hands of the people who are working for them. I think we need to change corporate law so that corporations are as incentivized to take care of their workers as they are to take care of their shareholders. It's gotten too out of balance. And look, I'm a capitalist. I want people to make investments and grow, but I don't want them to get all of the money and the workers be left behind. I think in terms of the social safety net, we have a much smaller social safety net in the United States of America than they do in most developed countries. So more support for education, for job training, crucially. I'll tell you, I do not like the budget bill that the Republicans passed. I think it was horrible on a whole series of levels. There was one thing in it that I did like, and that is that now if you were looking for Pell Grants or federal education support, you can get them for vocational training just like you can get them for college degrees. I think that's crucial to enable people to get vocations that will pay them more. So give them the support for education. I liked aspects of the Build Back Better plan that Joe Biden introduced and that we almost passed in Congress that would have given more support for childcare, early childhood development, healthcare, and education so that people can meet those bills while they're working. We can rejigger the economy and what we spend money on to support working people. We haven't done that enough. We've given too much power to investors and corporations and not enough power to working people. And that needs to change. That's kind of what Trump ran on. He said he was going to stand up for the little guy, except that he's not. I mean, once again, just like he did in his first term, his signature accomplishment is a massive tax cut for the wealthy. That's not going to help. While at the same time, cutting programs like SNAP and Medicaid that are such a crucial bridge for the working poor who are trying to rise out of that poverty. So that's basically what I think we need to do. There's a lot of work to go, but Trump's taking us in the wrong direction right now, in my opinion.
Thank you for those questions, Mario. And a quick reminder to everyone, if you have a question you would like to ask, press star 3 right now. Our next caller is Courtney, who's calling from Tukwila. Courtney, you're on live. What's the question?
Yes. Good evening, Congressman Smith. Thank you for another town hall. I find these are very helpful, and I appreciate all of the things you are doing to combat Trump's trying to tear down our democracy. I wanted you to comment today on the peace agreement that is being worked on between Israel and Hamas and Gaza. People are celebrating as if it's a done deal, and it's still being deliberated by the Israeli government. So I would like elected officials like yourself to put your weight behind this peace plan. Others have spoken out in favor of pushing for peace, like Senator Shaheen from New Hampshire.
As have I, by the way, on a number of occasions, including a statement about this peace agreement. So yeah, I just want to make sure people are clear on that. And I also opened my comment here by talking about it, and I will update you. By the way,
I'm sorry I missed your opening comment. Excuse me for bringing that up then. But I would like we need to keep the pressure on, because this could also evaporate like other peace plans have. And there is the fear on the part of the Palestinians that once the hostages are returned, that Netanyahu could continue bombing bombing Gaza, which is now 90% destroyed. There was an Israeli journalist from Haaretz newspaper who said the destruction in Gaza was greater than that of Hiroshima and Nagasaki after the atom bomb was dropped. There is no infrastructure left in Gaza. So I would like our elected officials like yourself to continue to push that the humanitarian aid be delivered immediately as soon as there is a ceasefire, that the international press be allowed back into Gaza, and that the legislation that you mentioned the time before that was moving through Congress that would restrict weapons to Israel until Israel can show that they will be used in a
I'm sorry,
responsible fashion.
Yeah, it's not actually moving through Congress. But yeah, no, I agree with you. And I will update you on one point. The Israeli parliament, within the last couple of hours, approved the peace plan. And
Wonderful.
as I understand the details of that, that means that the prisoner exchange, the hostages and then some Palestinian prisoners are going to be exchanged within the next 24 to 72 hours. And that the offensive operations are supposed to stop within that time frame as well. And Israel is supposed to withdraw to an agreed upon line. So it is moving forward, but I completely agree with you. It is a long, long way from over. We're going to have to continue to put pressure on, also on the Israeli government and Hamas as well to maintain that peace. I completely agree.
Right, and I appreciate your efforts, because only if we keep it in the public view and keep pressure on will there be peace. I mean, it can slide back easily into the same, daily destruction that's been going on for 2 years. So thank you for your efforts.
No, thank you. And just to wrap that up, the process of rebuilding Gaza and giving the Palestinian people some sort of self-rule and help and hope going forward is crucial to a lasting peace. So there's a lot of work left to be done, no doubt.
Thank you, Congressman. Let's go to our next caller. Next on the line is Michael. Michael is in Auburn. Michael, you are on live. What's your question?
Well, hello. Thanks for taking my call, Congressman. This
Sure.
is Michael Hinshaw from Auburn. I've been keeping tabs on you for several years now. I like what you're doing. I do have some very serious questions that I really like answered.
Sure.
One is, actually I have a couple of them if you can bear with me. But
No problem.
we keep hearing this Trump violating the Constitution. Well, he can't do that. That's illegal. No, he can't take the money that's already been allocated to something and give it to something else. And I want to know, number one, why is that tolerated? If it is unconstitutional, then to me that automatically says or delineates that he has broken his oath of office. Now, correct me if I'm wrong there, but if he swore to uphold the Constitution, yet defies it on a daily basis, sometimes an hourly basis, why is it tolerated?
Yeah, I can answer that.
That's number one.
Okay, go ahead.
No, that's question number one.
Sure.
Go
Yeah,
ahead.
no, look,
go ahead.
So the way
I'll
this
take an
process
answer to that.
plays out is, look, this is any sort of situation. You have rules in a variety of different aspects of society, and people will break those rules from time to time. I always think of sports analogies. Forgive me, I'm a sports fanatic. Hoping the
Oh my,
Mariners
yes, but
game
there are
5
consequences.
Yeah. So yeah, but I mean, if you're playing football and there's a holding penalty and nobody calls it, well, you just keep playing. So number one, you do have to have the enforcement mechanism. Well, what is the enforcement mechanism in the United States of America? The courts. And if the president does something that violates that, you take him to the courts and you sue him, which we have done repeatedly and dozens of
Well,
different
not often
examples.
enough.
I disagree on that. I think we've done it really often.
Okay. Okay.
I think
I'll accept that disagreement. Go ahead.
Yeah. Most recently, of course, there was the court rulings on Trump's, wanting to deploy troops to Portland. And we got 2 court rulings back to back saying, no, there is no emergency. You can't do that. We've also gotten a series of court rulings saying that the tariffs are not legal because there is no emergency that justifies what Trump is doing on that. A number of employees have been put back in place after Trump fired them because the courts have determined that he didn't have the power to fire them. So all of that has happened. But as I explained earlier, then this works its way up the courts. Well, first of all, in a number of instances, these court rulings have been issued, and Trump has been very slow to follow them. Remember all the court rulings about that gentleman from Maryland who they deported to El Salvador that said, no, you illegally deported him, you have to bring him back. They didn't. They waited. And the courts did not follow up, as I said earlier, by sanctioning the administration for disobeying their ruling. So I think they didn't take the next logical step to enforce that ruling. And then second, the Supreme Court, I don't know why. Well, I do. I do know why. Because the court is reluctant to force a constitutional crisis. Back in the 19th century, the court ruled against Andrew Jackson when he was president. And Andrew Jackson had this famous quote, "The court has ruled, now let them enforce their ruling." Basically saying, screw you. I'm familiar with that. You can't do anything about it. And it's true. I mean, the courts, they don't have an army. They don't have a military. They don't have the ability to enforce it. By the way,
they have no enforcement arm.
Right. But by the way, my staff just helpfully pointed out to me that we have 446 active lawsuits against Trump administration actions across this country. Could there be more?
Big deal. Good. That means nothing.
Well, it doesn't mean nothing.
Pretty much it does. If orders are given by the court and those orders are completely ignored over and over and over again, then that probably means, okay,
hold on. You initially said that we hadn't brought enough lawsuits. Okay, so I was dealing with that.
Okay. Yeah. Well, then you just actually, you reinforced my point by telling me how many you have, yet nothing is still being done.
Yeah, you have multiple points here, sir. Now you really do have to let me answer here. But I was dealing with that one point that you talked about on the number of the lawsuits. But second is the courts have not followed through and enforced their rulings, and the Supreme Court has backed up Trump repeatedly. As I said earlier, what they do is they say, well, we're not saying that what Trump is doing is legal, but we're going to let him keep doing it until we decide. So I think the Supreme Court has been complicit in allowing this to go forward. So what are your alternatives at that point? Your alternatives are to build public support in opposition to what Trump is doing. And that's what we have to do. Other than that, I want to be publicly very clear. I am not in favor of armed revolution. Okay. I am not in
what
favor.
Did you say? I'm sorry. I didn't. Did you say armed revolution?
Correct. I am not in favor of that. I understand where you're coming from, but that's not what I'm in favor of. So since that's not on the table, since political violence is not something that I support, what you have is the courts and political argument. And we have done rallies. We are trying to build support across this country to get more and more people to say no. And this comes up in the 2026 elections. Republicans will be up in the 2026 elections. And if we can build the case that what Trump is doing is bad for the country and they've simply gone along with it, then the people can speak and we can begin to take back our government. That's what we have to do. It's frustrating. It's a terrible situation. I wish Trump wasn't president. I wish he wasn't president the first time. There's a whole lot of conversation about how that came to pass, but that's how we can stand up to him.
Exactly.
And that's what I'm thinking about doing. Got a lot of people here. You said you had another question. I'll give you one more. That one took a while, but what else you got? Hello?
And Mike, in there? Hello? I'm here.
Yes, sir. I lost you there for a second. Go ahead, sir.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Are you still talking to me?
I am.
Oh, okay. So that brings us to a different point. Nobody wants armed revolution. Nobody wants that. I don't care how hardcore you are. Nobody wants that, except for those ultra. Well, I won't even get into that. My second question is, we keep hearing these things about he's unhinged. He's deranged. He's doing things that no president has ever done before, yet getting away with it on a daily basis. Well, if that is the case, and he has also, what's the term I'm looking for? He has disavowed the Constitution. Let's put it that way. He has broken his oath of office. Then why in the world and how? Why is the 25th Amendment not acted on?
Yeah, I can answer that.
Please
Because
do.
the 26th Amendment requires, I think it's 2/3 of the cabinet to sign off on it. And Trump's cabinet does not agree with your assessment or my assessment. So the cabinet isn't going to do that. You know, they're the ones who decide the 25th, 26th, I forget, sorry, which amendment it is. But it is Trump's own cabinet that has to make that decision. And they are not doing that because they are supportive of what Trump is doing.
Thank you, Congressman. Thank you, Michael, for your questions. A quick reminder, if you'd like to sign up for the Congressman's e-newsletter, please press *6. And let's go to our next caller. Congressman, we have Chris on the line. Chris is in Federal Way. Chris, you're live. What's your question?
Hi, Congressman. My question is pretty much simple. We were talking about the tariffs earlier when you first started out, and we just want to know pretty much why are the tariffs being a main inference on housing? Because majority of housing has been salary capped to a certain extent, but since Trump has been in office, now it's raising the rent on people like me, and they're not even letting us know. They're just automatically raising it. And I'm ex-military along with my husband, and we're like trying to figure that out. But at the same time, there's not enough help in order to be able to balance that out. And we just want to know what is going to be done or what can be done about that.
Yeah, rising rent, at least at the moment, I wouldn't 100% or I wouldn't necessarily blame on Trump. Rising rent around here is driven primarily by the fact that we haven't built enough housing. I also think that we haven't invested intelligently in terms of affordable housing. There are actually a fair number of units of apartments that have been built with affordable housing. They were built to be affordable housing, and they received federal and state and local funds in order to be built. And they're not currently occupied because they were so expensive to build that the rent is too high. Now, and I've got my staff looking into this, but then why don't they lower the rent? I mean, if they don't have anybody in them, yeah, you would need to make this amount of rent in order to pay back the loans or whatever you did to build it. But certainly some rent is better than no rent in that regard. So I think the way King County and the Puget Sound area here has managed its affordable housing dollars and dollars that are going for that support leaves a lot to be desired. We need to look at that money and figure out how we can spend it better. But the bottom line is we need to build more housing. There's not enough housing, which means that, demand outstrips supply and drives up costs. Now, what I'm arguing about on the tariffs is that Trump's making that more difficult because there are basic materials that go into housing. Steel, aluminum, softwood lumber, apparently, appliances. And all of those things are now more expensive than they were 6-7 months ago because of the tariffs that Trump has put in place. But we also have to build more housing. And the reasons I said, because the rent is being pushed up on folks.
But these rents are being pushed up on low-income houses that's been built almost half a century ago.
Understood,
so
but
current ones, they're not new, and they're steadily
understood.
rising. I mean, with one, and now $1,000 up.
Right. But no matter when the particular house or apartment that you're renting was built, the overall supply of housing is going to impact what that rent was. If you had another apartment or another house that you could go to that was cheaper, then A, you could go to that other house or other apartment, and B, it would put economic pressure on the apartment or house that you're in to lower the rent. So regardless of when your individual unit was built, the overall supply of housing impacts the rent that you are paying, if that makes sense.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chris, for that question. Let's go right to our next caller. Next up, we have Tiffany. Tiffany is in Newcastle, and she has a question. Go ahead, Tiffany.
Hi. The first thing I wanted to mention was not actually a question, but to share my support of standing up for the shutdown, as it were, and not being like, okay, we'll vote for this.
I hear you.
I want to mention that support because I think it is helpful for you guys to know some people are behind it. But the Republicans, to a certain degree, but significantly the administration, has shown they'll say that we'll negotiate and then they'll just refuse to spend the funds or not go along with passing the thing. They're never acting in good faith recently, or even halfway decent faith. The other thing that I had wanted to have you talk about is, in particular, when it comes to the budget, and sometimes the news cycle makes it hard to hear what all is being talked about. But at the moment, the budget, the shutdown is being phrased as Democrats are holding out for health care. There's a lot more going on besides just health care. And I feel that much like in a hostage situation or some other sort of hard negotiation, being like, well, okay, we'll give on everything else that's super important but this one thing, they've just gotten you to give away a whole bunch. We've repeated this process over the past few years. So why this emphasis on just healthcare and then we're good, and not addressing the fact that a number of other things should not have happened in that budget that are?
Let me walk through a couple basic arguments on that. And I have my own personal view, but part of entering into this battle over what to do with the continuing resolution in the budget is, as Democrats, we want to win the argument. We want the American people to side with us because we're not going to be able to get the support we need to be successful if they don't. So a whole lot of very thoughtful people dive into the numbers and say, well, what's the best argument? What's the most effective way to make our case? And the conclusion of those people was that healthcare was the thing that was going to get people's attention, increased premiums, people losing their health insurance. This was a big issue that could focus it. The thinking being that, well, if you have too many messages, you don't have any one message. So we're going to focus on healthcare. Personally, there's been this great debate in the Democratic Party, since Trump came to power. What's our best message? How do we approach this? Okay, well, we're talking about that. Well, we shouldn't be talking about that. We should be talking about this. I'm sort of an all of the above kind of guy. If we have a whole series of arguments, let's make a whole series of arguments. There's different pieces of it that are going to appeal to different people. Now, you have to have an overarching narrative, a theme. You can't be all over the place. But the overarching narrative and theme that Trump is consolidating personal power at the expense of the American people and advancing policies that only benefit the very wealthy at the expense of everyone else, then pick your issue. Healthcare, food security, tariffs, using the U.S. military to invade our cities, using ICE to terrorize the immigrant population, and then you can pick whatever issue you want. So I don't actually agree that we should only talk about healthcare around this shutdown. And you've seen during the course of the last 50 minutes that I've talked about a wide range of issues. And one of them, by the way, is the one that you raised, which is Trump abusing his power. Whatever deal we cut, if we don't rein in his ability to simply unilaterally rescind that deal, then we haven't really accomplished anything. And there are things we can pass that would clearly restrict Trump's ability. A lot of what he has done is he has taken legislation, well-meaning legislation, that's been passed as long ago as 60 years ago, that gave the president emergency powers to deploy the National Guard, emergency powers to invoke tariffs, emergency powers to cut spending programs that turned out not to be necessary. And Trump has abused the living crap out of those emergency powers. So let's take them back. Let's say no. Go ahead. Sorry.
I'd like to interrupt that he is being significantly allowed to. He was allowed to continue abusing those powers when there was the response that said, nope, we're not going to say that he has to have us declare that this is a problem in order to keep doing these
I would question
interventions.
you on that in terms of who exactly said, nah, it's fine. It wasn't
So I
Democrats, it was
forget.
Republicans in Congress, to be sure, but
Yes,
he
it was
just did
Republicans
it.
in Congress.
He
Yes.
just did it, and that's also an argument.
It is part
So,
and part of the entire problem. I absolutely agree. And I support not, as you mentioned, not limiting it to just one
yeah,
item.
there's a
Because
lot of
you'll end
issues
up
on the
selling
table. Let's
when you're just trying to get someone to stop demolishing your driveway.
right. Yeah, there's a lot of issues on the table, and I think we should take advantage of all of them and use them as aggressively as possible and not limit ourselves to one. I completely agree with that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let's get to our next question. We have Charlie on the line. Charlie is in Federal Way. Charlie, you're on live. What's the question?
Thank you so much for letting me get on. So, Congressman Smith, it seems to me like a lot of these problems that we're dealing with stem from an inability or a lack of firm leadership in the Democratic Party. All the Republicans have gotten behind Donald Trump, and they have refused to block all of the crap he's doing, and they supported him in these outrageous things that he's promoted. On the Democratic side, we don't seem to have a leader. Who do we have? What do we need to do to find someone who will help consolidate the party to help us push forward our agenda and help get the Republicans to stop and back up what they should be backing up from the very beginning?
Yeah,
Who have we got that we can rally behind?
Let me make 3 quick points on that. I think that's a really important conversation. First point is, one of the things that is troubling about Trump is that he comes out of this as more of a cult of personality than a policy leader. I don't want that.
Yeah, totally.
Okay?
Yeah, totally.
I don't want the Democratic Party to pick our personality cult and then go have a personality cult fight. The Democratic Party is a coalition. It is a coalition of a lot of disparate people. Let me just expand that even beyond the Democratic Party. The people who don't support what Donald Trump is doing in this country is a very broad coalition, all right, that includes some Republicans for that matter. And in a broad coalition, you're not going to have the type of just, blind unity that you see the Republicans. Trump has consolidated power by threatening and intimidating anyone within the Republican Party who dares to oppose him. I do not support the idea that Democrats need to match that. Okay, I don't. I think we need to build a coalition that's going to be disparate, because that's what democracy is supposed to be about. You build coalitions to win elections, and you build coalitions to pass policy. And by the way, those coalitions shift. It's not always the same group of people, depending on the issue and depending on the election. That's what representative democracy should be, and that's what I think Democrats should do. So that's point number one. Point number two is, when it comes to leadership, leadership is impossible without followership. Okay. And, the broad Democratic coalition, shifting back to the Democratic Party, tends to be highly critical of everything that we do. And that's fine. But it also makes it difficult to unite behind a message. I have some very firm opinions about what our message should be. But our broad coalition includes challenges, and I'm going to segue slightly here into an important issue. Some of the things that have been advocated by the left side of our coalition include abolish ICE, defund the police, abolish the criminal justice system. So if you're advocating for those policies and then blaming leaders for not doing an effective job of delivering those policies that are manifestly unpopular and not effective, those things didn't come from the Democratic Party leadership. They came from aspects of our coalition that then held us up to a litmus test of whether or not we supported those things. We never should have supported those things in the first place. So the divisions come from within the broad coalition as much as they come within the leadership. Now, I will close on a positive note. And we're up against time here, so I'm going to close on this and give some closing statements, and we'll be done for the evening. We have a ton of talent in the Democratic Party. You want leaders? We've got Gavin Newsom. We've got Governor Pritzker. We've got Ruben Gallego and Mark Kelly in Arizona. Alyssa Slotkin is out there, I think, delivering a strong message. We've got great governors: Shapiro, Whitmer, Wes Moore, Andy Beshear, Roy Cooper in North Carolina. We have a lot of very talented people delivering a strong message, and we're going to need to move forward on that. But look, I'm sorry, I'm thinking of a Star Wars quote about how the dark side is not better. It's just easier in the short term. Yeah, if you got one person and no matter what he says you agree with, yeah, it's simpler. It's also not what the United States of America is supposed to be about. We're supposed to be about representative democracy, allowing voices to be heard. And like I said, building coalitions that move us towards greater opportunity and equality for all. So, yeah, it's going to get a little messy on the Democratic side. I've been working in Democratic politics for a long time, starting at a very low level, and I am familiar with that battle. But I don't think we should spend too much time lamenting the fact that we're not as united as the Donald Trump Republicans. We should build our message, build our coalition, and go present the American people with a reasonable alternative to what Trump is doing. And that's what I'm trying to get involved with. So thank you for that question. I will close this out by just saying that I really appreciate this. I'm going to try to do as many of these telephone town halls as I can. So it depends on what side of the country I'm on and whether or not I'm on an airplane. But I think this is really helpful to stay engaged. And this is a crucial, crucial moment for our country. I mean, how this government shutdown battle plays out is going to have a lot to say with where we go forward in the next year on a number of really important issues. And let me just end where I began. Please don't think this is your only opportunity to tell me or my office what you think we ought to be doing. Reach out to us. Take advantage of the website and the contact information that our moderator has been very helpfully providing you with. And we will also keep you regularly updated on the impacts of the shutdown, where negotiations are going. Again, emphasizing that at the moment, the Republicans are saying we're not going to negotiate. Hopefully that will change soon. But we want to keep you informed and also make sure that the lines of communication are open so that we can hear from you and be as responsive as we possibly can. So thank you very much. We'll do this again soon, and I hope you all enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you, Congressman, and thanks to everyone for joining this very important town hall with Congressman Adam Smith. If you'd like to stay up to date on the Congressman's work, please follow him on Facebook, X, Instagram, and YouTube at Rep. Adam Smith, as well as on Blue Sky at adamsmith.house.gov. If you would like to subscribe to his e-newsletter, just stay on the line right now and leave your name and email address after the tone. Thank you again, and have a great evening.